Welcome, everybody, to Seattle, Washington, and DevHub's headquarters. I like to say built in Seattle, deployed worldwide. I am joined by a very special guest, friend, business partner, co-founder, co-CEO, chief architect, CTO of DevHub.com, Daniel Rust. Fun fact about Daniel Rust, prior to DevHub growing in the past 3 years, it was him and I on the front lines of essentially sales. So my role was to get people very excited about what DevHub does. Of course, everyone says, oh, wow, we really like it. But like, is it possible? I would shut my mouth and I would bring Daniel in. And so affectionately, I call him the closer. Daniel, welcome to this episode with you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This session is going to be more or less a rapid fire of kind of what I'm hearing from our sales teams, what I still hear from the layman who doesn't know anything about websites and even what DevHub technically does, to someone who has had a lot of experience with websites, even to the extent of even getting sued, right? So we fit somewhere in that enterprise version of websites. And with that, let me hit you with the first question. If you had to divide up the 4 most important aspects of a website, assign a percentage in terms of importance to design, structure, actual usability, including speed, mobile accessibility, and then, of course, the future state of what that website can be, right? So not to set it, forget it, but again, how would you say in terms of importance you would divide all those things up?
I would say structure is probably the most important, just because not only for, you're building the website for your customers, but you're also, at the end of the day, for local SEO, you're building the website for Google. So the structure is really important to establish that, the hierarchy of the pages, how they're linking, kind of that technical SEO part of the site. As far as like design, I'd say about 20%. Obviously you want it to match your brand, beyond, brand compliant and all that as well. And to, obviously look good to your customers when they visit there. Good imagery, imagery is really key in the design part of it. Usability, obviously speed, super important. Mobile devices, most people that are interacting with franchises are on a mobile device, out in the world, moving around, a lot of different sort of aspects there. And then, future state, really, like, you want to, build up your site so that it's constantly evolving. It's not just kind of set in stone, and that you're kind of planning for the next phase without needing to like kind of reset everything every single time you want to do something new.
Yeah. And again, the reason why I bring up that one as like almost the starting question, because again, it's to get maybe someone who's new, maybe someone who's middle in terms of understanding websites, like the at least bigger categories of what we're thinking about when we're doing sites. It's not just, oh, my nephew can build a site for $1,500. That's not what this is, which kind of leads into the second question, which is, we've been doing websites for basically 23 years. When it comes to that, the question I always get is, how is DevHub different than a Weebly, a Squarespace? Like, what is the real difference between when we say we do websites versus one of those platforms?
Yeah, I mean, those platforms are usually for like an individual business. Like, you usually have like one location, maybe two. You're either, or you might be completely offline. You might be, selling products. You might be like, it's really kind of focused on one. They have just a big wide range of like basically templates that you can take off the shelf, kind of tweak them a little bit, that probably like elevate your brand, because you probably don't have too much of a brand already when you're using those platforms. And, you just have a lot of things to work with, a lot of options to just kind of go with. Obviously, you're kind of stuck into whatever you kind of picked, as far as like the design and stuff, because, and they're more drag and drop. So they're like, make it easy for you to kind of just put something together, no technical skills, not really worrying about a lot of like the bigger scalability, things like that, because it's a smaller website. We started in that space, and what makes DevHub a little bit different is really we're focused on, having, the brand compliance as far as like look and feel and design, but make it in more of a scalable, more of a more of a product. You're building more of a product as your website than just like something that's like more design focused or content focused.
Right. And then also the fact that it's tailored toward businesses with more than typically one
Yeah.
website
So
within
like,
their structure.
yeah, unique problems that are, once you hit a certain number of locations, you want to obviously do things like have a location finder. You want to have it interconnected between sharing content between your locations, things like that. A lot of unique use cases that we solve for specifically with our platform, even compared to some other enterprise level platforms that are more, again, more generic. We're more heavily focused on a specific kind of use case.
Multi-location franchise. So then, leading into the next one, moving right along, what is your opinion on WordPress for franchise brands?
I think WordPress can be great for franchise brands, especially like in the inception, like when you're not like when you're trying to still figure out your business, you're, trying to put something together that's quick and can fire up. It really kind of, you can do it the right way. Obviously, WordPress has a lot of things you can do the right way and things you can do the wrong way, like bad plugins and maintaining it and all that kind of stuff that maybe are less of an issue when you're small, but when you're big, there are risks that you don't want to have on the plate as far as the brand goes. So it can be done. It can be really good if you do it the right way. But it also, like in most cases, it's done the wrong way or kind of hacked together, and then it kind of falls apart a bit when you try to scale your business.
Yeah. When we say the website is truly the hub of all digital marketing activities or strategy, what does that mean to you?
It's the kind of basically connecting all your systems, into your website so that everything that's coming through, if that's scheduling appointments, if it's contact forms, all those things are like obviously critical business drivers of your business, and having it the hub where all that, all those connections, all those different sort of pieces of content and how it drives business to you is all tied in with the website.
Was there a moment where you're like, oh my God, websites are very important to like a franchise brand?
I think when we kind of got into, this space a little bit more, like, because again, we kind of started, we had a long history with websites and did it in different categories, but kind of found our sweet spot with multi-location and franchise. Obviously, it's all about local SEO for franchise brands. So, like the importance of the website is, very large for that to do well in local SEO. And you're competing with obviously other people in your space, but you're also competing with like mom and pop, like established that have been there for 40 years, and you might be coming in and trying to like, compete in markets there where they already have like a presence.
Yeah.
So the website is super important to do that because you don't want to diminish, like the quality work you do as a franchise compared to like say a mom and pop business that's been there or a regional one. But, you also want to be able to like, again, compete without, Google seeing you as just, hey, we're just have a location here, but we're not really there as far as like operating locally.
Yeah. So the thing that keeps me up at night is when I think about the future of websites, right? I mean, again, without going too much into our history, 17 years old, fast forward almost 30 years, actually a little bit less than 30 years, thank God. Like we're in 2025 now. Like what is the future of websites, at least in the multi-location franchise space, at least the way you see it, the way you're planning it, in terms of our product, in terms of the state of the industry, like where are you seeing the role of a website going 2025 plus 2 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think like before COVID, like as far as like how brands operated, like even like restaurants, a lot of them didn't do online ordering and all these things that triggered them to put more connections into their website other than just having like a PDF menu or something on the site that someone might check out. So I think websites will continue to be more connected to your data and be that source of truth. Really the source of truth that supplements what Google has on their, like, if you're managing your profile there, they have like, okay, here's all the fields that you can fill out, which you want to do that. You want to make sure it's fully complete to the extent you can do that. But your website is that supplement for anything else that, a consumer would know about your brand. And it's more important in the future when you have AI that's crawling the sites and things and wanting to, like, again, build knowledge about your brand. Basically, if it doesn't exist on your Google profile and it doesn't exist on your website, then nobody's going to know about it. So, like, the website being that supplement to make sure that everything that a consumer would want to know to make a decision exists on that website. And then, obviously, websites is owning that sort of brand experience, which obviously you have social and stuff that you can kind of emphasize and build your brand there, but reinforcing that with the website. So that's where, like, you still want to have your design and your kind of like feel of your brands. Is your website still the only place where you have like full control over the feel of your brand, without limitations, videos, everything like that.
In terms of like the tools available to, let's say, a franchise brand, in terms of managing at scale and whatnot, like what tools do they have available within DevHub that make it easy for them to manage multiple locations versus, other, let's say, dashboards or platforms that they're using to manage their websites?
Yeah, we try to set it up so that it's more of a system in regards to like how you're operating, how you're launching new locations. One is obviously like you want to be able to customize sites a lot as they're build up so that you can get like that local SEO, great content, be able to like keep enhancing the site with like team member photos, reviews, things like that, and extend that site and make it more like a highly valuable asset, but also not making it so that you're taking the last site you did and you're just duplicating it and then changing all the content, like where it's like only the last website's your best one and all the old ones are not getting touched. Try to eliminate that with like, a scalable framework. And then also for new locations that come on board, make it really easy to fire up so that you're not waiting weeks or months to get that site in a good spot when you're first launching a location. Because that first sort of traction that you build in the market is really important. Not only like the reviews you build initially, but also like how you're going to be ranking and from the website itself.
When, we get a lot of RFPs, right, for franchise brands who are looking to switch website vendor among other vendors, let's just say, but focusing on websites for a second, like what are the major issues that you see time and time again within an RFP that we easily solve for, but are also critically important to a franchise brand to solve for?
Yeah, I think we see a lot of kind of, I don't know, churn and burn, like your, like basically like, hey, you spent, last time you did your website and you built up like even like content and SEO, maybe all those kind of pieces, but making sure that there's a clear action plan of how you're going to mitigate the risk of losing that or like deleting things that are important, basically that first audit of like what's working, what's not working.
Yeah.
Keep the things that are working, maintain it. So at least it's going to baseline and measure against it so that you can make sure that you're not like critically damaging your business and just setting yourself up for the future where you aren't like, again, changing vendors from an RFP and kind of just scrapping everything that you built up and starting like, from zero again, that you're kind of maintaining those good things and those maybe even like operationally.
One of my favorite things when we do, if I have to join sales calls nowadays, is like, well, you'd have never heard of our CRM because it's industry specific.
Yeah.
And the chances are we have. Why is integrating different tools easier with a DevHub as part of an RFP and then eventually launch? But nonetheless, like, how did you build this thing that it is flexible enough to handle who someone wants to bring to DevHub, to their DevHub powered website when they're looking to switch?
Yeah, we've kind of carved out, like, just because again we're very specific and franchise multi-location, like these are all the common types of integrations, not like the particular CRM platforms, but just that CRM in general. Like, okay, you have a form and it needs to probably send data outside of just our system. Right. So build up a system where it's easy to kind of just integrate in. We already have a framework built up so that integration level of effort is a lot less than, say, I got to write like a custom WordPress coding, to get this thing to work. That we have those sort of like established types of integration. If it's reviews, forms, uh, listings integration, so that you don't need to update the phone number on our side if you change it in your profile, things like that. We have those like established types of integrations that we see very commonly, and then have workflows that are already built in to support those. So it saves our team time for implementing it, and then obviously gets the kind of things that can go wrong get eliminated off the table.
And pass that savings to you, franchise. Okay, so this is, I always think about this question because, again, sometimes the way we price it for people, they're like, wait, why is it, the range of it? Talk to us about ADA, the 3 levels of ADA, how we're thinking about ADA.
Yeah.
There are litigious people in the world.
Yeah. So the first level is, basically you don't want to have like nothing. You don't want to have any, have nothing on your site in regards to ADA. So first level is like the accessibilities and other different sort of really easy to turn on. Basically you just add a plugin and it'll like fix a lot of your, issues and make it more accessible for visitors when they're navigating the site. Where you can just plug it in and it's kind of like a good stopgap that you should at least have that. Level 2 in our world is like native ADA, where we actually, plug in and we actually audit the site. We make sure that like it's basically all native, like the plugin. Basically, if the plugin's on the site, it's not doing much because it's already there. It's already in the code. It's already like built so that the menus are accessible. Any sort of interaction that a customer would do on your site is accessible. If that's a booking form or things like that. And that's like the next level. And then, but that's typically like, okay, we're going to build the project and we're going to audit it. We're going to make sure all those boxes are checked, and then we're going to go live. But then that's when your team steps in and they have access. They can start, you have franchisees that can add content, they can add imagery, things like that. And all those entry points are places where like someone might have skipped a step or something, didn't fill out the right information, didn't do a good descriptive, alt tag on an image. And that's the third level is really the ongoing monitoring, where you kind of check up on the site, and you do more of a deep dive even with real users. And this is not something we do ourselves, this is where you bring in a third party. And that's where kind of obviously the fees come into play, because you're basically contracting with a third party to do the ongoing monitoring and like that third party assessment of your ADA. To catch things that maybe your team didn't catch or that don't get caught with like normal, just automated monitoring tools.
Again, I always think of like a website as a living, breathing thing. It's on the internet. You might get away back in the day of not having updated it for 5 years. 10 years ago, I say 10 years ago, you could have built a website, forgot it for 5. 5 years ago, you could have forgot about it for 3. 3 years ago, you could have forgot it for 1. And now it needs to stay extremely relevant, especially with the addition of, again, listings getting more sophisticated within Google, to, again, some of the AI tools that people want to ask questions, what's the best arborist near me or whatnot. A website published to the internet has to be understanding of what environment is it in, right? From security, vulnerabilities, to other things changes that are happening with Google. Like, rattle off just some of those things, that it's not just a set it and forget it, but they need to be thinking, just riff for a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, you have like a lot of different, changes in the market. If that's if it's like maybe like, okay, we operate in Canada and they have certain laws for privacy for their consumers, California, like those things are constantly evolving of how you're, basically how you're running your business online. That's one thing is like, that's sort of like, privacy and different requirements there. Obviously you have Google, which is like any new way that they can, get information, if that's like schema markup, if it's like how they crawl the site, any best practices there, that's a constantly evolving sphere of like things you can do that aren't like required, but they're like, going to give you an upper hand in the market as being a competitive first to market. Like, hey, I implemented this new thing first. And then probably like third is like obviously with like Google ad platforms, they also have a ton of new requirements. Obviously, your site needs to be secure. It needs to, basically follow their models of like, okay, how are you handling privacy consent? And those are more like guidelines. They'll like not let you run ads if you don't do X, X, and X. And you don't want to get like in a place where you have something that you've been running for a while and suddenly you can't run your ads anymore, and then as far as vulnerabilities go, same thing. Like a lot of platforms, making sure like, especially with, open source, like a WordPress, like you have a lot of flexibility, but also you need to make sure you're maintaining like latest versions of plugins so that, it's potentially you don't like, again, leak personal information. Your site doesn't get hacked. It doesn't go down all the time from like bot activity, stuff like that.
Is there anything that keeps you up at night related to websites?
I mean, nothing.
He's a rock, honestly. He doesn't give a he's just steady. He does not. Yeah. Do you have any questions for me? No, you're good. Cool. That was it. Again, you heard it here. Again, hopefully we bring you a couple more of these episodes with Daniel Rust in terms of, again, this was sort of setting the foundation of just how we're thinking about websites across the spectrum, easy to hard. And then, from there, getting into more nuanced stuff specifically around franchise. So tune into the next one where we'll bring Daniel Rust in. And if you have your questions, feel free to DM them to me either on LinkedIn or via the DevHub website. And we will get you those answers individually so you don't have to wait for the next episode. But yes, we're here to provide that value to you, whether you're a customer or not.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining, Daniel Rust.
Yep.